So, what if a single book, written thousands of years ago, claimed it had the solution to all of our modern problems? Well, today, we're going to dive into that very text, the Śrīmad Bhāgavatam. It's a work that has shaped spiritual thought for literally millennia.
And I'm not exaggerating when I say millennia. To put it into perspective, this work of philosophy and theology was written 5,000 years ago. Just let that sink in. That makes it older than most of the world's major religions. It's truly a foundational document in human spiritual history.
You know, it's one thing to hear about a book, to know it exists, but it's something else entirely to know what's actually inside it. So, what are the core ideas here? Let's find out.
Okay, here's how we're going to break this down. First, we're going to unbox the text itself. Then, we'll get into its teachings on the Supreme Lord, check out the cosmic blueprint it lays out, and look at the path it recommends for followers. And we'll wrap it all up with one final big question.
All right, first up, let's just get a feel for the book itself. You know, where it came from, who wrote it, and how it's all put together.
So, the Śrīmad Bhāgavatam is credited to the sage Vyasadeva. Yep, that's the same author of the famous Bhagavad Gita. He wrote it 5 millennia ago with a really clear mission: to deliver profound spiritual knowledge. The version we're looking at was brought into English by A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, making this ancient wisdom accessible to a totally modern audience.
And the book has this really cool, super helpful structure. So each teaching kicks off with the original verse in the ancient Sanskrit script. But right next to it, you get a Roman transliteration so anyone can actually pronounce the words. Pretty neat, right?
And then, boom, you get the direct English translation. This makes the ancient verse immediately understandable. So a core concept, like this idea of an unborn, all-compassionate supreme being, is put into plain language for all of us.
But honestly, that translation, it's just the tip of the iceberg. The real meat of the book is in what's called the purport. This is an extensive commentary that dives deep into the philosophy and the context behind every single verse. This is where all the meaning gets unpacked.
Okay, now that we get the structure of the book, let's jump into its central figure, the Supreme Lord.
The text describes this kind of core tension between two types of people. On one side, you have the peaceful devotees, who are free from all those material cravings. And on the other side, you have persons in material modes, who are just constantly driven by this hunger for more stuff, more power, even more spiritual status.
And this tension is actually key to understanding why the Lord, who's described as unborn, decides to show up. According to the text, it's the friction between these two groups that causes the Lord to manifest in the world, appearing suddenly, quote, just like fire.
The Bhagavatam uses some really specific terms to talk about the Lord's nature. One of them is adhoksaja. What that means is that the Supreme is fundamentally beyond anything our limited senses can grasp. You just can't see, hear, or measure the divine with our everyday tools.
And the text has this perfect analogy for this. It compares trying to understand the Supreme with just your intellect to a frog in a well trying to imagine the ocean. I mean, no matter how much that little frog puffs itself up, it can never, ever grasp a reality that is so far beyond its tiny experience.
So, if the Supreme is beyond our senses, what does the text say about our place in the universe? Let's zoom out a bit and look at the cosmic blueprint it lays out for the soul, for society, and for creation itself.
So at the very heart of its philosophy is the condition of the soul. The text teaches that our pure spiritual consciousness gets kinda polluted by the material world, and this leads to what it calls a false ego, which makes us mistakenly think that we are our temporary physical bodies, instead of something much, much more.
And to create a functional society, the text describes these 4 social orders that come symbolically from the Lord's universal form, kind of like different parts of a body. The Brahmanas, the spiritual and intellectual class, they come from the mouth. The Kshatriyas, the administrators and protectors, from the arms. The Vaishyas, who are the merchants and farmers, from the thighs. And the Sudras, the laboring class, from the legs. Now the text makes a really crucial clarification here. It says this system is based on a person's qualities, their guna, and their work, their karma. It is explicitly not supposed to be determined by what family you're born into. So, if our consciousness is polluted by the material world, what's the fix? Well, the Bhagavatam prescribes a very specific solution, the path of devotion. And this path is laid out as a really clear journey. It starts with practices like hearing and chanting, which are meant to cleanse the heart. That then leads to assimilation, where a person starts to develop real steady faith and understanding.
And the final stage, well, it's described as ecstasy, the absolute highest level of love for the divine.
And according to the text, this isn't a journey you're supposed to take alone. It really emphasizes the need for a bona fide spiritual master, a guide who's part of an unbroken chain of teachers, a disciplic succession, to make sure the guidance you're getting is the real deal.
This all brings us to our final section. After looking at its structure, its theology, and the path it lays out, what is the ultimate purpose of this ancient book?
Well, the answer, stated right there in the text, is both ambitious and, well, profound. Its stated purpose is to provide the solution for all the problems of human society. No big deal, right?
And the text is also very clear about who its audience is. It was written for those of us who feel trapped in a cycle of suffering, all for the sake of these tiny, fleeting moments of pleasure.
So we're left with this one final question to chew on. In a world that's still searching for meaning, what can we actually learn from an ancient text that so boldly claims it has the answer?